Candice stood on the wooden balcony of the party's suite, looking out over the sprawling canopy of the great forest. Even at this late hour, she could sense the quiet hum of magical energy that permeated Haliriel's towering red pines. In the distance, faint lights from other treetop dwellings glowed, dotting the night sky like a cluster of stars. The air felt cool yet charged, as if the trees themselves were anticipating the group's upcoming journey. She exhaled, wrapping her arms around herself. Tomorrow, she would return home to the Nythari Tribe, her people who lived in the dense jungles far from this lofty haven. She hadn't seen her village in years, and the conflicting swirl of excitement and anxiety formed a tight knot in her chest. Her duty as a guide on the mission to visit the Watcher weighed heavily on her mind. She believed they needed the Watcher's knowledge to better understand the prophecy and the threat of the Disciple of Air, yet she knew any detour came with risks. And there was the Windfighter, an elegant but intimidating elven airship they would fly, a vessel Candice had only heard stories about. Tomorrow, she would experience flight for the first time. The suite behind her was comfortably lit by a crystal heater, bathing the main lounge in a warm glow. The decor was simple, polished cedar floors, smooth oak beams, and open windows allowing the forest's cool breeze. Within, the rest of the party gathered, each lost in their own reflections. Finally, Candice steeled herself to turn back inside, joining them around a low wooden table, scattered with maps and notes. Thomas was busy tidying up the scattered paperwork that detailed the mission. Standing near the table, he let out a tired sigh. "I think that's about all the notes we have on the Watcher. Some references, a few sketches from old scrolls, and not much else." He exchanged a quick glance with Lucas. "You found nothing else, right?" Lucas shook his head, tucking a stray lock of hair behind his ear. "No, I went through every record I could get my hands on," he said, voice heavy with frustration. "It's basically shrouded in myth. Even the Queen's archivists don't know much. Apparently, the Watcher is revered by Candice's tribe, but beyond that, the official documents are scarce." Mina stood by the window, arms crossed. She leaned against the wall, gaze distant. Everything seems uncertain. So many moving pieces, relics, the Disciple of Air, the prophecy, and now this detour. She looked over as Candice approached. "Candice, are you sure about this? That the Watcher can shed light on everything we've been struggling with? I'm not questioning you, just... We're risking the mission's timetable to do this." Candice gave a small, uncertain smile. "I know it's a risk," she replied, her voice soft. "But if we ignore the Watcher, we might lose a chance to gain critical insight. Everyone's telling us that the prophecy is tied to Lucas and Mina, that the Disciple of Air threatens the eastern continent. The Watcher could clarify our path. My people guard that site for a reason." Thomas let out another sigh, then nodded. "All right, I've made peace with it. Though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried. We're crossing half the kingdom just to climb up a mountain in the jungle." At that moment, Jarek, who was leaning against one of the suite's ornate wooden pillars, cleared his throat. "We've done more dangerous things," he said in a low voice. "Still, we should be prepared. The prophecy might be on everyone's mind, but the real threats could be lurking somewhere else." Dira, perched on the edge of a chair, folded her arms. "What concerns me most is the unknown," she said. "I've tried contacting some acquaintances near the Nythari territory. There are rumors about strangers snooping around, people who might be after the same knowledge we want from the Watcher." Candice's face fell at the mention of threats near her home. "I had no idea. I thought we were the only ones who would bother traveling there." She paused, her voice catching in her throat. I'm worried about what we'll find. Not just for our mission's sake, but for my village." Lucas stepped away from the table, crossing the room to put a reassuring hand on Candice's shoulder. "We'll face it together," he said quietly. "Whatever we find, we'll handle it. We've come this far, and you've been nothing but dedicated to helping us. We owe it to you to protect your home." Candice nodded, giving him a grateful look. "Thank you," she whispered. "I appreciate it. I'm also nervous about the flight. I know you said the Windfighter is safe, but it's my first time leaving solid ground in an airship." Her cheeks colored faintly, and she cleared her throat. "Not that I don't trust all of you. It's just unfamiliar." A ghost of a smile came to Mina's lips. The Windfighter is certainly impressive, but it's smaller than the usual big sky galleons, so it'll be more personal. She gestured with her hands. We'll be able to feel every shift of the wind. Just remember, you'll have an incredible view if you're not too busy shutting your eyes. She tried to give Candice a playful smile, attempting to ease the tension in the room. Candice managed a shy laugh. I'll try my best to keep them open, she teased back, though her smile carried a tremor of lingering apprehension. Thomas set down the last of the maps on the table and straightened up. Well, the plan is to depart at first light. We'll take half a day's flight to reach the outskirts of the jungle, then we'll land and proceed by foot. According to Candice, the approach to her village isn't exactly suited for airships. Correct, Candice said, turning serious again. It's a deeply forested region, plus the vantage points are limited. There's a small clearing near the base of the mountain slope. We can leave the Windfighter there, under cover. My people might be wary at first, but if I vouch for everyone, we should be allowed entry. Jarek walked over to the table, picking up one of the older scrolls. I still can't believe we're doing this, but I understand why, he said gruffly. You and your tribe are tied to the Watcher more closely than any books we've read. You probably hold secrets we can't even imagine. Let's just hope it's all worth it. Candice exhaled, steeling herself. We'll find out soon enough. The thought of seeing her friends and family mingled with the reality that she'd left them behind to serve a larger cause. That sense of both longing and guilt churned in her stomach. Dyra tapped her fingers on the table, scanning the group. We have only a few hours until dawn, she said. We should rest, though I doubt many of us will get much sleep tonight. Too much on our minds. Her gaze shifted to Lucas. How are you holding up? I know tomorrow won't be easy. Lucas shrugged and looked out at the forest canopy. I won't lie. I'm anxious, but also hopeful. We have to do this, right? If the Watcher can give us clarity about the relic I've been studying about Mina's role in all of this, maybe we can finally find a way to deal with the Disciple of Air before it's too late. Mina's eyes flickered with concern. You're still feeling strange since the last time you tried to use the relic, aren't you? When Lucas nodded, she looked over at Candice. It's more than just knowledge. It's also about protecting ourselves from the side effects of all this ancient magic. The Watcher might know what the relic is doing to Lucas. A momentary hush fell over them. Candice cleared her throat. I didn't realize it was getting that serious. But if the Watcher's knowledge can help us understand your relic better, then we have even more reason to go. We just have to be mindful of time, Thomas reminded everyone, sliding a note across the table. After we finish at the Watcher, we still have to make for the Eastern Continent. The Disciple of Air is contained, but we don't know for how long. The last thing we need is more chaos while we're off searching for answers. Jarek rolled his shoulders, stepping back to lean against the pillar again. So that's it. Get some rest, prepare, head to the Nythari Tribe tomorrow, then climb a mountain to talk to an ancient power. He barked out a low laugh. We do lead interesting lives, don't we? Despite the somber mood, Candice cracked a small smile. That we do. Eventually, the group dispersed around the lounge. Some wandered to the large open windows for a final glimpse of the forest. Others lingered at the table, securing documents and rolling up maps. Candice found herself leaning against the smooth wooden railing again, her heart beating in tandem with the gentle sway of the great pine. She saw Lucas and Mina talking softly in one corner, their expressions reflecting shared concern. Thomas was diligently organizing supplies in a large satchel. Jarek paced once more across the length of the room, and Dira, ever watchful, wrote a few final notes on a small parchment. A wave of gratitude coursed through Candice. They were all prepared to follow her into unknown dangers, risking themselves for the faint promise of the Watcher's revelations. The air felt heavy with expectation. In less than a day, they would descend from the lofty heights of Haliriel, leaving behind the calm glow of the crystal heater and the comforting branches of the red pine. Ahead lay a journey through dense jungle, a confrontation with secrets as old as her tribe's traditions, and the intangible threat of what they might discover about the prophecy that bound them all together. But for tonight they were safe, together in this suite that had become a temporary sanctuary. Candice closed her eyes and breathed in the pine-scented air, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves beyond the open windows. Despite the unease, there was a warmth in that moment, in the knowledge that they were not facing destiny alone. She felt the pulse of determination coursing through her, an echo of her tribe's spirit urging her onward. Tomorrow, they would set forth on the Windfighter, rising into the skies for the first time, her first flight, her first real step back home. One way or another, the Watcher would have answers. Whether those answers would calm their fears or raise new ones remained to be seen. For now, with the hush of night blanketing Haliriel, Candice let herself hope. The moonlight filtered through the crystalline window panes of their suite, casting an ethereal glow across the cedar floors. Lucas sat at the edge of the bed, his shoulders hunched, eyes tracing the veins of the relic bound to his wrist. Its faint, rhythmic pulse mirrored the turmoil in his chest. He barely noticed when Mina entered the room, the soft click of the door muffled by the storm of his thoughts. "Lucas." Her voice was gentle, like a whisper of wind brushing through the great forest outside. She crossed the room, her bare feet silent against the wood. Draped in a light silk robe, her golden hair cascaded over one shoulder, shimmering in the low light. "You've been sitting there for an hour." He didn't respond immediately, his fingers brushing the edges of the relic. When he finally turned to her, the weight in his brown eyes was palpable. "I can't stop thinking about it, Mina. The prophecy, the disciple, the relics. What if I can't do this?" Mina knelt before him, placing her hands on his knees. Her bright green eyes met his, searching, grounding. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said, her voice steady, but soft. "You never have." Her words cracked the armor he had been building all day. He reached out instinctively, his fingers threading through her hair, pulling her closer until their foreheads touched. "What if I fail you?" he murmured, his voice thick with guilt and vulnerability. "You won't." The certainty in her voice was unwavering. She tilted her face up, her lips brushing his in a feather-light touch. It wasn't a kiss meant to comfort. It was a promise, a tether to hold him steady against the tide of his doubts. Lucas exhaled shakily, his hands moving to cradle her face. "You're the only thing that makes sense to me," he admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. Mina didn't reply. Instead, she rose to her feet, guiding him to stand with her. She untied her robe and let it slip from her shoulders, pooling like liquid moonlight at her feet. Beneath, she wore a simple camisole, its fabric thin enough to reveal the lines of her figure. The sight rendered Lucas speechless, his breath hitching as he traced every curve with his gaze. "Let me remind you," she whispered, taking his hand and pressing it against her heartbeat. The warmth of her skin and the steady rhythm beneath his palm anchored him in the moment. He hesitated, his mind warring with his heart, but Mina stepped closer, closing the gap between them. Her lips claimed his in a kiss that was anything but hesitant. It was deep and consuming, a wordless declaration of trust, desire, and reassurance. Lucas responded instinctively, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her against him as if she were the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Their movements grew unhurried but deliberate, a dance of hands and lips exploring skin and scars, each touch igniting something raw and unspoken. Lucas traced the line of her collarbone, his lips following the path his fingers carved, while Mina's hands roamed his back, grounding him, anchoring him to her. The heat between them was tempered by tenderness, a desperate need to feel alive and connected in a world that threatened to tear them apart. When they finally collapsed onto the bed, their limbs entwined, the air between them was charged with an intimacy that transcended mere physicality. Mina brushed a strand of hair from Lucas's face, her fingers lingering on his cheek. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "we'll face it together." Lucas tightened his hold on her, his head buried in the crook of her neck. "I don't deserve you," he murmured, his voice breaking. "You deserve everything," she countered, pulling him closer, her lips pressing against his temple. "And I'll keep reminding you until you believe it." The night stretched on, their shared breaths and whispered reassurances weaving a cocoon of warmth and light against the encroaching darkness of their world. For a few precious hours they found solace in each other, a quiet storm raging in the stillness of their suite. The party stood together at the edge of the Windfighter's sleek, metallic frame, preparing to board. The large wooden dome of the command center hangar loomed behind them, filled with the quiet hum of enchantments as the flight vessel stood ready. A slight chill in the air stirred their thoughts, making them aware of the weight of their mission. They had gathered their supplies, made their final checks, and were bracing themselves for the journey ahead, the detour to the Watcher, with all its mysteries, followed by the ultimate expedition to the eastern continent. But as their eyes scanned the craft, something felt off. A few of them, especially Lucas and Mina, had noticed a subtle tension in the air, a shift, but it wasn't until they actually moved to board the Windfighter that they truly understood. There, standing by the entrance of the Windfighter, her regal presence, unmistakable, was none other than the Queen of Elves, Aphyrosia herself. The group froze for a moment, eyes widening in surprise. No one had expected the Queen to be accompanying them. Her tall, elegant form stood with an air of calm authority, her silver hair cascading down her back in intricate braids that gleamed under the enchanted lighting. She wore a robe woven from the very essence of the forest, with delicate patterns and symbols of the trees, earth, and air. Her crown, formed of intertwining leaves and gemstones, shimmered in the low light, as did her piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through them. For a moment, there was an uncomfortable silence. The Queen, who commanded the highest authority in Haliriel, was standing among them. She was as regal as they had imagined, every inch the monarch of a people who had lived for centuries. Altharis was the first to recover, stepping forward to break the silence. His normally composed face betrayed a hint of discomfort as he adjusted the folds of his tunic. He turned to the group, his voice steady, yet tinged with respect. The Queen of Elves, Aphyrosia, will be accompanying us on this mission. It is imperative that we consult with Ceylan. His wisdom will guide us. Lucas exchanged a glance with Mina, his mind swirling with questions. Why had the Queen decided to join? What role did she think Ceylan might play in the mission? And most importantly, what did this mean for the party's path ahead? Why does Ceylan's wisdom matter to the Queen? Mina asked quietly, her eyes narrowing slightly. He is old, ancient even, but what does his knowledge mean for us? Aphrosia's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. Ceylan is not just a guardian of the Watcher. He is the keeper of knowledge that goes back centuries. His wisdom is as old as our people, and his understanding of the prophecy we now follow is crucial. Her voice was serene, yet it carried the weight of authority. I have come to consult him personally. I believe there are aspects of the prophecy that only he can shed light upon. Thomas, always quick to question, raised a brow. What parts of the prophecy could Ceylan possibly know that the rest of us don't? We're all part of this, right? Aphyrosia turned her sharp gaze to Thomas, her calm demeanor unwavering. The prophecy is not a simple tale, Thomas. It is woven with threads of fate, and only those who have lived long enough to see these threads can truly understand their full meaning. She paused for a moment, then added softly, Ceylan's role goes beyond simple knowledge. He has lived through every stage of this prophecy from its inception. He may have answers to questions you do not yet know to ask. There was something about her tone, something cryptic in the way she spoke that made the air even heavier. Lucas felt a sense of foreboding growing, though he couldn't pinpoint why. Perhaps it was the Queen's certainty in her words, or the hint of something deeper that she wasn't sharing. Either way, there was no turning back now. Altharis stepped forward and bowed slightly, acknowledging the Queen's words. His usual calm demeanor seemed to shift subtly as he spoke again. As you all know, Ceylan is not only ancient, but elusive. His home is atop the mountain where the Watcher resides, an isolated peak, difficult to reach. We are fortunate that the Queen will accompany us. Her wisdom and stature may help ease his reticence, if needed. The mention of Ceylan's elusiveness only deepened the mystery. Who or what was Ceylan really? Why did he live in such isolation? And more importantly, what could his wisdom possibly reveal about the Children of Hybris and the looming threat of the Disciple of Air? The party was left to their thoughts as they moved to board the Windfighter, each person quietly processing the Queen's unexpected presence. Once inside the Windfighter, The group settled into their seats, still stunned by the revelation. The vessel hummed to life, its magical engines beginning to pulse with energy. Through the transparent glass, they could see the vast, sprawling landscape of Haliriel stretching out beneath them. The great expanse of forests, mountains, and rivers, all illuminated by the soft glow of enchanted lights, seemed almost surreal as the Windfighter lifted off the ground, leaving the command center hangar behind. Candice, seated next to Lucas, felt a surge of conflicting emotions. She had always respected Aphyrosia, but the Queen's sudden decision to join them on this mission felt too deliberate. The weight of the Queen's authority seemed to press down on her, and the thought of consulting Ceylan, the guardian of the Watcher, left her with an unease she couldn't shake. There was no question that the Queen's presence would shift the dynamics of the mission. She glanced at Lucas, whose gaze remained fixed ahead, his mind no doubt occupied with the deeper implications of the Queen's involvement. Candice knew that Lucas, too, felt the unease that had begun to settle over the group. His connection to the prophecy, his connection to the relics, was becoming more apparent with every step. The closer they got to uncovering the truth, the more dangerous their journey would become. The Queen, however, remained composed, her eyes gazing out at the vast horizon. Her silence was almost unsettling, but it carried a sense of purpose. She had no intention of revealing her true reasons for joining the group, at least not yet. Whatever secrets she held, she had kept them hidden from the others. As the Windfighter soared into the sky, the party was left to wonder just how much they still had to learn about the true nature of the prophecy and the forces that controlled their fate. As the Windfighter passed over the landscapes of Haliriel, there was a palpable tension in the air. Each member of the group, despite their outward calm, was caught up in their own thoughts about the mission ahead. The Watcher, Ceylan's wisdom, and the Queen's hidden motives all weighed heavily on their minds. The only certainty was that this detour was about to take them deeper into the heart of the prophecy and into the unknown. The Windfighter hummed with a faint, magical energy as it soared through the skies above Haliriel. Its sleek, elongated frame gleamed in the sunlight, marked with glowing runes that pulsed rhythmically, blending seamlessly with the vessel's quiet propulsion. Inside, the group gathered in a compact but well-furnished cabin, their expressions a mixture of anticipation, awe, and apprehension. Lucas leaned against the reinforced glass window, his brown eyes scanning the endless greenery below. The vast expanse of the great forest stretched as far as the eye could see, its deep emerald hues shimmering under the light. The sheer size of it made him feel small, a reminder of how vast their world was and how little of it he truly understood. "It's beautiful," Mina murmured beside him, her voice soft but filled with wonder. She, too, gazed out, her bright green eyes reflecting the vibrant landscape below. Their telepathic link buzzed faintly, a steady reassurance that, despite the enormity of their mission, they were in this together. Thomas sat in the corner of the cabin, his arms crossed, and his sharp eyes surveying the interior of the Windfighter. His protective instincts were on high alert, and while he appreciated the marvel of the ship's design, his mind was elsewhere, focused on the unknown dangers ahead. He glanced toward Candice, who stood near the opposite window, her amber eyes fixated on the horizon. Candice's emotions were a storm. The journey home was stirring memories she hadn't anticipated. It had been over a month since she left her village, and now, as the jungles of her homeland neared, nostalgia mingled with anxiety. The towering mountain of the Watcher, shrouded in mist and mystery, would soon be within reach. For all her confidence as a Nythari warrior, the weight of the prophecy pressed heavily on her shoulders. The Queen of Elves, Aphyrosia, remained composed, her tall, regal figure seated with an air of calm authority. She had hardly spoken since their departure, though her piercing green eyes occasionally flicked toward the mountain that loomed faintly in the distance. Her presence added an unspoken gravity to the journey, reminding everyone that this was more than a simple detour. The Windfighter glided effortlessly, its magical propulsion bypassing any turbulence. Aldous, standing near the helm, gestured toward the front, his commanding voice cutting through the cabin's quiet. "Ahead is the great forest, where the journey truly begins. Observe it well. The land holds memories older than any of us. The group shifted their attention to the massive expanse of trees below. Each tree seemed ancient, its branches weaving into a canopy that obscured the forest floor. Lucas's thoughts wandered as he considered what might dwell beneath those shadows. Creatures unseen, histories untold. Mina's hand brushed his arm, grounding him. Her silent reassurance carried through their bond. As they flew over the forest for less than an hour, the scenery began to shift. The vast greenery gave way to a shimmering body of water, the giant lake. The sunlight reflected off its surface, casting radiant beams through the cabin. The lake's expanse rivaled that of the forest, its edges barely visible as the ship sped along its southeastern course. "Magnificent," Aphyrosia said softly, breaking her silence for the first time since their departure. Her voice carried a reverence that matched the sight. The group exchanged glances, sensing the Queen's connection to the land and its history. Candice remained quiet, her gaze distant. The sight of the lake reminded her of the legends her tribe told. Stories of the Watcher's origins, tied to the water's depths. The lake was said to hold echoes of the past, whispers of a time before the Nythari were forced into exile. Her mind turned to her mission, and the responsibility she bore in guiding Lucas and Mina to the Watcher. Would it truly reveal the answers they sought, or would it only deepen the mystery? An hour later, the scenery changed again. The Storm Mountains came into view, their jagged peaks piercing the sky. Dark clouds swirled above them, and faint flashes of lightning illuminated the ridges. Even from a distance, the mountains exuded a sense of menace. Their perpetual storms made them impassable by traditional means, a natural barrier that had protected the Nythari Tribe for centuries. The Windfighter veered westward, avoiding the stormy peaks. "We'll bypass the mountains," Altharis explained, his tone matter-of-fact. "The coastal route will be safer and faster." The ship's path shifted, following the edge of the mountains and descending toward the ocean. The sight of the coastline was breathtaking. Golden sands lined the beaches, while waves crashed rhythmically against the shore. Beyond the beaches, dense jungles stretched inland, their thick canopies blending with the foothills of the mountains. The group watched in silence, their thoughts as vast as the scenery before them. For Candice, the coastline marked a turning point. Her heart raced as they drew closer to her homeland. Memories of her village, of the rituals and stories passed down through generations, flooded her mind. Yet, with those memories came the weight of her role. She was not returning as a simple Nythari warrior, but as a guide tasked with leading the Children of Hybris to their fate. The duality of her emotions, pride and fear, was almost overwhelming. The Windfighter flew over the beaches, its course hugging the coastline. 30 minutes passed before the ocean to the west faded into dense jungle. The jungle's lush greenery stretched as far as the eye could see, a living labyrinth, teeming with life. Candice's village lay within its depths, near the base of the towering mountain that now loomed on the horizon, the Watcher. The group's first glimpse of the mountain left them awestruck. Its jagged silhouette rose above the jungle, its peaks shrouded in mist. The mountain's sheer size and foreboding presence seemed almost otherworldly. Lucas felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at it, the weight of the prophecy pressing harder than ever. Mina's hand found his again, her steady grip a silent anchor. The Windfighter began its descent, its magical propulsion allowing for a smooth and quiet landing near the jungle base. The group disembarked, their boots crunching against the soft earth. The air was thick with humidity, and the distant sounds of wildlife echoed through the trees. The mountain of the Watcher loomed above them, a silent guardian watching their every move. Candice took a deep breath, steadying herself. She turned to the group, her voice firm but laced with emotion. "Welcome to the lands of the Nythari. My village is not far from here, but we must tread carefully. The Watcher is near, and its presence is felt even here." Thomas surveyed the jungle, his protective instincts on high alert. "What should we expect?" he asked, his tone pragmatic. "The jungle can be both a protector and a predator," Candice replied. "The Nythari know its paths, but outsiders often find themselves lost, or worse." The Queen stepped forward, her regal presence commanding attention. "We are not here to disrupt your people, Candice. Guide us as you see fit, but remember, time is of the essence. The Watcher holds the answers we seek." Candice nodded, her resolve strengthening. She led the group into the jungle, her movements confident and precise. The path ahead was overgrown, but she navigated it with ease, her connection to the land evident in every step. As they moved closer to the village, the atmosphere grew heavier. The jungle seemed alive, its dense foliage pressing in around them. The sounds of birds and insects created a symphony of life, but beneath it lay an undercurrent of tension, as if the jungle itself was aware of their presence. Lucas's thoughts churned as he followed Candice. The Watcher, the prophecy, the relics, it all felt like a puzzle with too many missing pieces. He glanced at Mina, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to his internal turmoil. She met his gaze, her telepathic voice breaking through his thoughts. "We'll face it together, Lucas, whatever it is." He nodded, her words a small but vital comfort. As the group pressed onward, the towering mountain of the Watcher grew ever closer, its presence an unspoken reminder of the trials ahead. The path was not yet clear, but one thing was certain. Their journey was only just beginning.